Welcome to the LawyerFair.co.uk daily podcast. LawyerFair helps businesses find the right lawyer at the fairest price. But on this podcast, we just chew the fat with some great guests.
So it is indeed the LawyerFair Daily podcast, and if you are starting, growing, or have an established business, there are a few areas more critical to you than HR and, at some stage in your development, health and safety. And there is no better man in the land, in my view, to explain more about this than Mike Woolnough from Croner. Welcome, Mike.
Good morning. Hi.
Good morning. I know we've had some trouble with the line. Can you hear me okay, Mike?
Yeah, I can hear you okay. Yeah.
Okay. Well, anybody listening, if there are some gaps and pauses, it's technology. It's not Mike and I snoozing on a Friday morning. But listen, thank you for joining us, Mike. And obviously, Croner are specialists in both HR, health and safety. But just a little bit of background perspective on why these issues are important and kind of when they are important during the life cycle of a business.
Well, I think from the point of view of when I meet business owners, I think people have some fantastic ideas for some great businesses. But when they start progressing them, they never quite imagine that those people that they think will actually be doing and performing those tasks for their business will need employment contracts, there'll need to be structures, and those fantastic people that were enthused at the beginning of the project, their life cycles will change, families will crop up, and they'll perhaps be less reliable than they were, or they won't want to do tasks that crop up. So employment contracts and the actual relationship with your staff becomes increasingly important. But of course, for most business owners, it isn't really on their radar, and it's certainly not in their skill set. And quite often with a start-up or a small to medium-sized business, there isn't the financial resource to actually hire somebody full-time to take on that really, really critical role to make sure that whoever you're onboarding, and once you've got your staff there, they're rewarded properly and they're managed efficiently. Of course, then that leads on to the flip side, that once people have 5 or more employees in a business, we start using those dreadful words health and safety, and there are certain records that need to be kept and certain things that need to be done, which again, if you have the most marvellous idea for a business, you probably never imagined that if you were going to have 5 or 10 people sitting in an office, that you need health and safety policies and procedures. And, you know, heaven forbid that somebody announces that the maternity is looming on the horizon. So there's lots of things that we see when we talk to business owners, business professionals, that they probably hadn't thought about when they went running off with this terrific idea and developed themselves a fantastic business. And in a sense, that's really where a business like Croner comes in, because we are able to support business owners and managers by outsourcing their HR and helping them with contracts and handbooks and assisting them with the full compliance. And I hate using that word, but I think if there's one thing that people are going to remember from the last 15 years, it's the C word. I think everything we do these days has to be compliant. And, you know, from the point of view of, well, is it important? Well, yes, it is, because with health and safety particularly, it's a requirement to comply with your liability insurance. You know, I think a lot of people don't realise when they buy their insurances that they actually need to tick some boxes in case they need to make a claim, and that would be checked. There are wonderful people called loss adjusters who have a career in not trying to pay out on claims. And again, part of my job is, I suppose if you ask me, Andrew, what do I do for a living and what does our industry do, it probably helps directors and business owners have a really peaceful night's sleep.
Yes.
In a nutshell.
Well, hurrah for that. I mean, there are many an event I go to, Mike, where the recruitment of good quality people is at the highest, probably the top of the agenda, actually, particularly for growing companies. And of course, with that comes the management of those people. And it's often something, particularly for startups or entrepreneurs, that it's not instinctive, is it? It's not a skill set they naturally have. And therefore, clearly, the kind of offer that Croner provide is going to be extremely useful to those kind of individuals. I mean, you're talking to businesses every single day on these kind of issues, Mike. Are there other kind of regular themes that crop up, regular issues that crop up that these kind of entrepreneurs or growing businesses often and almost always do miss?
Well, do you know, the funny thing is, whether I'm dealing with a major corporate account and supporting a team, or whether we're dealing with a smaller business just starting out, I think they all have exactly the same issues. Once they've identified the people that they're looking to recruit, and that can be done by, first and foremost, having a very clear understanding of what you're looking for. So I'd recommend that you get yourself a cup of coffee, sit down and write a comprehensive job description. That will be really, really clear in your own mind and within your team's mind exactly the kind of person you're looking for. And it frames neatly for an applicant exactly what they're applying for as well. So let's face it, I think today one of the most valuable commodities we have is time. And if you're not going to be getting applicants that are not suitable for the job, applying, then that saves you masses of time. If everyone knows what we're talking about, we can actually cut to the chase a lot quicker and have a much more effective interview process and ultimately get through the shortlist. Because at the end of the day, the client's really just looking to put the right body in the right seat. So I think that's really, really important. And then using application forms is again really, really important. I think when we start a business, we employ people we know, we employ people we're friendly with, and we kind of have a flavour of where they are, and there's a trust element there. But inevitably, a business will start employing people it doesn't know. And for that reason, and I know this is going to come as an enormous shock to everyone listening, but in my opinion, people do very occasionally lie on their CVs. Now, CVs aren't formal contracts. They're effectively correspondence, and it's my responsibility as an employer to check that CV. So if I were to give somebody an application form, it would almost certainly have a note on the back to say that all the information entered is accurate and true, and it would remind the applicant that failure to disclose anything or to mislead could result subsequently in my dismissal. Now, having said that, it means that there is an element of control over that employee, and there is an encouragement for them to be slightly more transparent than they would normally be. So those couple of things, that's even before you sat in front of somebody and conducted an interview, can not only protect the business, but also frame neatly and focus for the applicant and the employer exactly what we're trying to get out of the process. So that's, and then obviously, statement of made terms of employment handbook moving forward. Again, probably incredibly dull things to any entrepreneur, but really, really critical in maintaining control. And coming back to the nub of the question you asked me, well, what do people always ask? Well, whether they're large or whether they're small, I think the biggest issue is that employers simply want their staff to come to work for the hours that they're employed for, to perform the task that they are supposed to be doing, and at the end of the day, simply go home, but do all of that safely. I get asked time and time again, how can we make sure people literally come in and do what they're supposed to do? Well, it's being clear, it's being prescriptive up to a point. Obviously, I'm not suggesting that we have handbooks that look like War and Peace or Moby Dick. I mean, it has to be a working document that maybe, 25, 30 pages long, which just lays out the company's standards and expectations. But it, without being too clunky, what it does is it frames everything neatly. We all know where we are. Now, when we work with a client, we would sit down with them, understand really what that client is trying to achieve and get that down in very, very simple, straightforward black and white terms, what I call Janet and John English. Put that handbook together, and then that becomes a working document so that if a client decides on a new policy or procedure, and that might be event-driven, you might have the unfortunate event of maybe a theft at work or something, and then you think, well, hang on a minute, we haven't got a right to search policy. Perhaps we need to do it. So that's a typical example of how a small business would add a policy. Well, the good news is those policies can be added at any time. And so to talk to somebody like me and like the team that we have here, we can discuss those issues ongoing, and they cease to become major problems, because I've seen processes and businesses clog right up, and of course the last thing we need is for that to be mismanaged and the process not be followed, and then we end up with a tribunal and the tribunal in the employer's mind is all about the theft, for instance, when actually it's about the process. And I think that's probably the big misnomer that a lot of businesses have, that they don't understand, that any sort of tribunal claim is about the process that's been followed. It certainly isn't about what's actually occurred.
No.
So, I mean, I've talked quite a bit about the employment sort of piece there, and I think it's as far as a snapshot. Hopefully, everyone's still awake, but as far as a snapshot, it just dips a toe in the water of some of the really basic things that can make a really big difference when you're bringing people on board. Health and safety, though, is equally as important, because there is a legal duty of care to look after your staff, and as dull as it might sound, again, if you've got the framing of that correct and people are aware of what they should or shouldn't be doing, and some of this is common sense, but bear in mind, if you've got a graduate that's joined the business, they probably won't have had work experience and they won't have the street smarts in the office. You know, Andrew, you and I got grey hairs, you know, deservedly over the years, and that's from knowledge and experience. And these guys don't, the guys and girls that you'd recruit from university don't have that knowledge and experience. So they need to be inducted. They need to be told what to do in the event of, all those sorts of good things, really just to sort of frame the work environment, which I think is sort of pretty critical. And every business is slightly different, so I'm not going to sort of spend 5 minutes today practice.
Yep.
But what I would say is that it might be a really good idea to sit with somebody that knows what they're doing over a coffee, and have some kind of review, because as a business, if you haven't done that, I think it can be really, really valuable and can save the business a lot of time and a lot of money. And you know, clearly, without wishing to be too salesy, it's what we do.
Well, I was going to come to that, Mike, actually, because and just get a little bit of a more understanding of what Croner does. But just going back on a couple of things, which I think are really important points, just to underscore, really, in my view. But I mean, it's a false economy, and a lot of businesses, certainly early stage, and even quite established, it's a false economy trying to wing this stuff, isn't it? Trying to save money on various things, because it'll come back to bite you. And I think the other very important point that I pick up as an entrepreneur myself is it's not really necessarily about whether someone's performed badly, and they probably or may well have done. It's the process, and if you get the process wrong, you're in a whole bowl of trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, these things tend to be process driven. You've hit the nail on the head, and you know, with the, as I alluded to earlier, with the employment area, if you don't follow a process and a procedure, then clearly the employee has leave to apply to take you to a tribunal. First question that's asked is, well, you know, what does the contract say? And if you haven't put a contract together, and you're required to put a contract in place within 12 weeks of somebody starting, so there's a little benchmark for everyone. If you haven't done that, that would lead to an automatically unfair tribunal. So you'll be paying the fees that the applicant would have paid to go to the tribunal, plus any outstanding money, plus any award for not complying. And that's a whole world of hurt just there, just because you haven't simply followed a process. The health and safety side of things, though, I mean, I suppose there is a saying that, you know, if you think getting health and safety right is expensive, try having an accident. And, you know, I suppose in our industry we sort of chuckle at that, but it isn't funny at all. You know, you can lose your liberty, you can lose your business, you can lose your home, and everything you've worked for if you have a significant accident. Now, I'm not suggesting for a moment that people that have office-based businesses have that kind of risk. You know, but you may have colleagues that will be driving to appointments. So are they fit to drive? If they're driving their own vehicles, have they got company insurance? So are they properly insured to do that? If somebody's returned from sickness, are they on any medication? Have you had a little chat to them for 2 minutes? Return to work interview, we call it. Are they fit to work? Are they on a medication? Is it making them sleepy? All those sorts of things, really, really important. We see it in the catering industry when people are coming back to work in a kitchen, not perhaps the most highly paid industry in the world, so people need to get back to work, but are they really fit to work? And if they're not concentrating in that kind of hostile environment, accidents happen. And so the first thing that would be asked is, well, have they been off sick recently? When did they return? What's their frame of mind? What was the return to work interview like, and can I see it, please? That's the point where I see sometimes when I get involved in talking to a client after an incident. And remember, I can't do anything about the incident. It's occurred. I can attempt to mitigate, but at the end of the day, if a client's made that mistake and is deemed to be negligent, it's a very, very tricky thing to sort out. So, I suppose if I had sort of said one thing about that whole area is, I like surprises at home, but in business I do not like surprises. And if somebody asks me a question, I like to know the answer before they ask it. And so by putting all of these things in place, in essence, that's really what we're doing as a business. We're putting everything in place, and you might never announce to me that you're pregnant. However, if you ever do, employee, announce that you are pregnant, yes, I've got a policy. Yes, I know how to manage it. And you know what? Even if I don't understand the policy because it's been written for me, I know I can pick up the phone to Croner or somebody that I know, and they will give me professional advice, and they will guide me through the process so that, again, it's back to that process-driven issue, and we move the business forward rather than it becoming a stumbling block. And I think that's really, really important because, I said earlier, time is so important when you have a business, and maximising people's return on investment, maximising their time in the business is absolutely critical. And quite simply, getting both of these things right, if you join the dots properly, you realise that that's exactly what you'll do for your business.
Well, listen, Mike, fascinating. It's a crucial area. So just wrap up, if you will, for me, a little more tightly as to what Croner actually does, how, what services, what the costs, how people can access the service.
Well, in a nutshell, it's a really, really straightforward service. There are three key things that we do, and if I start with the HR side of things, we would visit a client, have a look at any existing documentation. Employment law changes a couple of times a year at least, April, October, so things might need to be updated, but a whole suite of documents is put into place, and of course we have a large range of templates that the client will find really, really useful, things like application forms and disciplinary letters, that sort of thing, but we can tailor everything. So we put in a system effectively. We operate a 24-hour helpline with a team of experts based at our office in Hinckley. They are available to act literally as an outsourced HR department. We write letters, we give advice, we give guidance, we give support, and all of that is backed up using an online tool as well, which is really useful, really valuable, and is accessed through the internet. So it doesn't take up any space on anybody's computer, and wherever you have your passwords, think online banking really, wherever you have your passwords, you have access to that. So your business is at your fingertips when you're on the move. There is an optional insurance, so if clients are concerned about tribunals, they do have the option to take out a legal defence insurance, which would mean that we would be able to provide a legal defence at tribunal, and we would guarantee costs and awards, which does give the client a peace of mind. But as I said, any insurance is always optional. So that's sort of the third part of that. The other side of the business, the health and safety, again, policies, procedures, a site visit, a routine of regular visits. It might be a couple of times year one day a year after that. So if we've got a simple, straightforward office environment. But if I'm dealing with, let's say, a school or a college or a university, they might want to see me on a monthly basis, so we can sort that schedule out, that visit schedule, which is appropriate to the risk involved. And if a client has multiple sites, we'd expect to be visiting every single site. Sometimes you'll have a factory unit somewhere and you'll have an office somewhere else, so we would take care of that. But those policies and procedures go into place with a planner, so that all those things that need to be done are prioritised, they're datelined, and the relevant people are getting emails and calls from us to make sure that those boxes are ticked, as well as the support visits that we give. We have a helpline as well, and if things do go wrong, it really does pay for itself, because we're in a position to sit in interviews under caution. So if somebody has an accident, there's something that occurs called a PACE interview, police and criminal evidence interview, and we would sit in there, support the client, guide them through. And of course at that stage, I would expect, if a client's working with us, for us to have all those answers, so that when those difficult questions are asked, the enforcement authorities realise very quickly they're dealing with an accident and a very competent and professional employer, rather than someone that's acted negligently and might be facing a fine or an enforcement, or even considering a custodial sentence. So, all pretty serious stuff. We do offer also, for clients that don't have their own commercial legal defence insurance and insurance to support that. But my experience is that most medium to larger sized businesses have had that chat with their underwriters and their brokers, and they've got that in place. But they haven't, we can have that conversation. So in a nutshell, that's it. It's a system, a helpline, and an optional insurance, all backed up online, really easy, really straightforward, and critically designed for people that don't want to use it. So it's really easy, really, really simple stuff. But I think fundamental to somebody actually just getting on with earning money, dealing with their clients and growing their business, which is at the end of the day, I think, what most business owners that I've bumped into over the last 30 years simply just want to do. They don't want this other noise. So we're there to pick it up for them.
Mike, listen, thank you so much for that. Incredibly detailed. And I know you're also, you're very hands-on with clients that come on board. So often you're almost the first port of call, aren't you? Despite the fact you've got this resource behind you. So Mike Woolnough is the main man there if you want to speak to someone. cronersolutions.co.uk is the website. Am I right? Is that right, Mike? Just double checking that's the right website address.
Yeah, that's right. Well, if any clients want to contact me, I think you're going to be organising some kind of little web link from the main website at LawyerFair across to me. And if they just link on that hot link, they can email me directly. And I think you're going to be having a phone number there for me as well, Andrew, so that people might be able to just speak to me directly if they've got any immediate questions.
Well, Mike, you've let the cat out of the bag, because we are, as we will soon be announcing, we are actually going to form a partnership with Croner and very much recommending the services. So yes, there will be lots more information on our website and also at the tail of this podcast as well.
Fantastic. Okay, Andrew, well, it's been a real pleasure speaking to you, and hopefully if anyone is still awake at the end of having listened to this little broadcast, if they feel they've got any burning issues and want to just run something by me confidentially, they can have a little consultation with me over the phone at no cost, which would be great.
Well, you can't offer more than that, Mike. Thanks so much for your time. Have a great day.
Okay, cheers, Andrew. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mike. That was the LawyerFair Daily podcast. We'll be back again on Monday. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the LawyerFair.co.uk daily podcast. If you'd like to listen to more, why not subscribe and download each episode via iTunes, or visit us on the LawyerFair.co.uk website.